What if I told you the reason people hurt you, manipulate you, and steal your peace is because you let them? You gave them access. You showed emotion. And worse, you believed they cared. But today, that ends. This will teach you how to become untouchable, so that no betrayal, insult, heartbreak, or failure can ever affect you again. And our guide, Machiavelli. You think your emotions are signs of strength, that your ability to feel deeply, to love blindly, to care endlessly makes you noble. That's the illusion. That's the lie they told you to keep you vulnerable. And the moment you believed it, you handed the world your leash. Look around, the people who rise, who rule, who walk untouched through chaos. They are not the most emotional. They are not the most kind. They are the most composed, the most detached. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. In The Prince, he didn't speak about morality. He spoke about results, about how to remain in power in a world where others are constantly trying to take it from you. And here is the first truth. Those who feel too much fall too fast. Emotions are tools, but if you become ruled by them, you are a puppet. Why do people break you? Because they know what hurts you. Why do they manipulate you? Because you react. Why do they ignore your needs? Because you still chase them. Before we start this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell button, and leave a special comment for this video. Don't forget to like the video so that we can get the video to 1,000 likes. Let's get started. Now, listen carefully. You will never be untouchable as long as your sense of peace is tied to someone else's behavior. If someone can make you angry with a word, if someone can make you cry with silence, if someone can pull you into chaos just by withdrawing, then you are not in control. You are at their mercy. And that is unacceptable. You must become emotionally disciplined, not numb. Disciplined, not cold, controlled. You must stop allowing others to rent space in your head and collect debt in your heart. You see, when you react emotionally, you reveal your pressure points. The world takes note, and then it uses them against you repeatedly. This is not personal. This is strategic. People will push wherever there is softness. Machiavelli never said to become heartless. He said, use your heart strategically, and only when it serves your long-term power. So when someone disrespects you, your instinct is to rage, to argue, to prove yourself. But what if you didn't? What if instead you remained silent, unshaken, almost amused? What if your reaction became indifference? Now you become dangerous. Now you become unpredictable. Now they don't know what game you're playing because you're not playing their game at all. You are no longer baited by emotions. You are the one laying the traps. And let me tell you this. Emotional detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. You stop giving away your peace like it's a souvenir. You stop letting your day collapse because someone else was too blind to see your worth. Imagine this. They insult you and you feel nothing. They ghost you and your life continues. They betray you and you don't collapse. You calculate, you analyze, you reposition, because when your emotions stop being their weapon, their power ends. Emotional detachment is not about withdrawing from the world. It's about entering it with armor. It's about becoming immune to the things that once ruled you. People ask, but how can I become emotionally detached without losing my humanity? Simple. By realizing that your humanity is most powerful when it is selective. Not everyone deserves your warmth. Not every situation deserves your fire. Save it, reserve it, deploy it only when necessary. Because the more emotion you give to the wrong things, the more depleted you become when the right things appear. So here's your task. In every moment of tension, pause, delay the reaction, study the moment, watch how others move, remain calm, and in your silence, calculate your next move, not for revenge, but for repositioning. That silence, that pause, that lack of immediate emotional reaction is your new weapon. Detach, not because you hate, but because you see clearly. Feel less, not to become robotic, but to become rational. You are not here to be consumed by emotion. You are here to master it. And once you do, once you feel what you feel but act from strategy instead of impulse, you will finally understand what true power tastes like. There is a hidden war taking place in every interaction you have. A war not of fists, but of perception. A silent battle where the most powerful person isn't the loudest or the most emotional or even the most intelligent. It's the one who controls the frame. But what does that mean? It means that in every room you enter, every conversation you have, there is an invisible lens, a frame through which reality is shaped. And the person who defines that frame, who sets the tone, the tempo, the emotional temperature, owns the outcome. This is why weak men fail. Because they walk into a room and they adapt to whatever frame is already set. If someone is dominant, they shrink. If someone disrespects them, they justify. If someone questions them, they defend. They react. And in doing so, they surrender control. Machiavelli would spit on such weakness. A true strategist never allows the enemy to set the battlefield. He shapes it himself. He decides where the fight takes place, when it begins, and under what terms. The same principle applies to your daily life. If you do not define how others see you, then they will define it for you. And it will always be to your disadvantage. Watch how people in powerful positions move. They don't rush. They don't justify. They speak when they want to, not when expected. They answer questions with questions. They make others feel slightly uncertain, slightly off balance, just enough to maintain psychological superiority. That is frame control. When you show up to a negotiation, if you behave like you're lucky to be there, you've already lost. If you're trying to win someone's approval, you're giving away the frame. The person who chases is always in the inferior position. You must shift this. You must walk in with the calm assumption that you belong, not because you were invited, but because you are the one bringing value. This is not arrogance. It is a strategy. Frame control starts before a word is even spoken. It's in your posture, your silence, your eye contact, the way you take your time, the way you allow others to speak first, knowing full well that they are revealing themselves while you remain unreadable. Understand this. People are desperate for emotional validation. They want to be understood. They want to be liked. That desire makes them manipulable. But when you don't seek that, when you don't flinch in the face of tension, when you don't explain yourself just because someone raised an eyebrow, you become untouchable. The Machiavellian mind knows that power is not always shown in action, but in restraint. The wolf does not bark. It watches. It waits. It owns the space by not needing to prove that it belongs. Let's say you're confronted. Someone challenges your authority. Most people respond by arguing, defending, proving their credentials. That's what the average man does. He lowers himself to someone else's frame, but not you. You hold the frame. You stay silent a little longer. You tilt your head, maybe even smile, and then you respond slowly, deliberately, without a hint of desperation. That pause alone is power. When you don't rush to explain, you imply that the accusation doesn't even register on your scale of relevance. When you don't react to provocation, you show that you, not the world, dictate your internal state. You become like a still lake. Others throw stones, but the surface barely ripples. And that calmness, that self-control, that refusal to be dragged into emotional chaos, unnerves them. It confuses them. It dominates them. Most people try to win arguments, but the Machiavellian wins by refusing to acknowledge the argument as valid in the first place. He wins by shaping the situation so thoroughly that resistance becomes either foolish or futile. Frame is not just in words, it's in implication. If you speak as though you expect respect, people will often comply without understanding why. If you walk with the internal certainty that you don't need anyone's validation, you become immune to their disapproval. You must internalize this. Every moment you allow someone else to define who you are, what you deserve, or what reality is, you are placing the sword in their hand and exposing your neck. Control the frame or be controlled. Control the narrative or be trapped in someone else's story. Control the tone of the room or be swallowed by its noise. Because in this world, power belongs not to the most righteous, but to the one who shapes the lens through which righteousness is even seen. The moment you open your mouth, you offer the world a map of your mind, and the more you speak, the more visible your weaknesses become. That is why the powerful, the truly strategic, the ones who cannot be touched, they are masters of silence. Not because they are afraid to speak, but because they understand the value of not being known. There is nothing more unsettling than a man who does not reveal himself. No opinions, no desperate explanations, no emotional leakage, just a calm, unreadable presence. And that presence creates fear, because people fear what they do not understand. Machiavelli wrote that it is far safer for a ruler to be feared than to be loved, if he cannot be both. But silence. Silence gives birth to both. The feared man is silent. The respected man is silent. The mysterious man is always silent. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself, justifying yourself, and reacting to every little offense, you stop being a piece on the board. You become the one moving the pieces. Observe the world. People overshare constantly. They talk to fill empty air. They confess things no one asked for. They expose their emotions, desires, wounds, as if everyone is worthy of that truth. But the world is not your therapist. The world is a battlefield. And in war, the man who gives away his position is the first to fall. You think that opening up will make people like you, that being honest and transparent is the key to connection. And maybe in a perfect world, it would be. But Machiavelli didn't write about a perfect world. He wrote about this world, where people exploit information the moment it becomes available. So what do? You reverse the game. You become the man of few words, the one who listens more than he speaks, the one who observes, notes, remembers, but says nothing. You become the mystery in the room, and once you do, you gain power. Most people will never experience this. Why? Because when people don't know what you're thinking, they start projecting. They make assumptions. They try to fill in the blanks. And every time they do, they reveal themselves, not you. Silence turns the tables. It forces others into vulnerability. While they try to figure you out, they expose their hand, their thoughts, their insecurities, their goals. all while you remain a mirror, reflecting nothing, absorbing everything. Strategic silence doesn't mean passivity. It's not about being mute or disconnected. It's about deliberate control. You speak when you choose, how you choose, and only to shift power in your favor. Every word has weight. Every silence has intent. There's a reason men who speak less are perceived as more intelligent, as more dangerous, as more seductive. Because silence invites speculation, and speculation is often more powerful than truth. A man who reveals nothing becomes a canvas onto which others paint their fears, desires, and fantasies. He is whatever they imagine him to be, and that imagination gives him more power than reality ever could. Machiavelli would have called this the art of ruling without the crown, because even without formal authority, a silent man commands the attention of the room. People lean in when he speaks, not because his voice is loud, but because they've waited to hear it. There's another layer to this: unpredictability. When people can't read you, they can't prepare for you. When they can't predict your next move, they can't block it. Predictability is a liability, but silence? Silence is unpredictability in its purest form. Even in conflict, silence wins. The one who remains calm, who doesn't react emotionally, who lets the other person spiral out while he simply watches, always wins. Because rage, whining, defensiveness, they're all weapons handed to your opponent when you lose control. But when you say nothing, when you offer no emotional fuel, the fire dies, the attack fades, and your silence becomes the loudest message in the room. Think of the greatest power players in history. Were they shouting? Were they constantly trying to prove themselves? No. They sat back. They calculated. They let others talk themselves into weakness. That's what you must become. The quiet mind behind the curtain. Not because you're scared to speak, but because your words are expensive. Because your silence has become more powerful than their noise. And once you realize that the less you reveal, the more control you gain, you stop chasing clarity. You start becoming the shadow everyone tries to understand, but no one can touch. Every time someone disrespected you, every time they betrayed you, ignored your worth, or walked away when you needed them most, what did you do? You broke, you begged, you collapsed. You allowed them to touch the most fragile parts of you because you had no fortress inside. That ends now. Machiavelli, in The Prince, warned of external enemies, but the wise listener knows his words point to something deeper. The real enemy is not out there, it's in here. It's the self that allows others to disturb the peace within, the mind that opens the gates for every opinion, every insult, every seductive lie. You want to be untouchable? Then stop patching holes in your outer life and start building the inner citadel, stone by stone. Because here's the truth. Every time you rely on others for approval, comfort, or protection, you give them power. You become exposed. You hand over the keys to your peace. And the more you do it, the weaker you become, the more desperate, the more enslaved. People don't need to conquer you if you've already surrendered. You keep waiting for the world to be kind, for love to be safe, for people to validate you, but none of that is coming, not consistently, not reliably, and even when it does, it's temporary. It comes with strings, with expectations, with a hidden cost. So what's the solution? You stop waiting. You stop needing it. You build. You build the fortress within, a state of being where your worth is decided by you, where your peace is generated, not borrowed, where no one can manipulate you with silence or attention. praise or insult because you are no longer starved for it. You train your mind like a general trains his soldiers with discipline, with clarity, with purpose. You confront every weakness, every fear, every emotional wound, not to cry over it, but to reinforce it, to turn your scars into stone. Imagine a man like this, unmoved by flattery, unaffected by rejection, a man who walks through betrayal not as a victim, but as a sovereign force, adjusting his plans, cutting ties, moving forward without emotional debris. That is power. That is a man who cannot be manipulated. The fortress within is not arrogance. It is not apathy. It is alignment. It is knowing what you stand for, what you accept, what you walk away from, and never hesitating when the time comes to enforce it. You think emotional strength is about how much you can endure? No, that's endurance. True inner power is about what you refuse to absorb in the first place. People test you constantly with their words, their silence, their chaos. They want to see if they can shift you, if they can unbalance you, and if you let them even once, they mark you. They learn exactly where to strike next time. But when you are rooted in your own code, when your thoughts, your identity, your values are fortified by solitude, reflection, and self-discipline, there is no next time. You do not bend, and this doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means pain no longer controls you. It no longer defines you, because you've built a place inside, a still, silent, immovable space where no one's opinion reaches, where no one's betrayal can shake the foundation. The weak man blames the world for his suffering. The strong man uses suffering as the mortar for his fortress. So you stop broadcasting your problems. You stop looking for saviors. You stop explaining your boundaries. From now on, your life becomes a sovereign territory, defended not with words, but with energy, with distance, with unbreakable standards. You don't respond to disrespect. You remove yourself. You don't prove your worth. You embody it. This is the path Machiavelli would have you walk. Ruthless self-reliance, a loyalty not to people, but to principle, a commitment not to comfort, but to control. Because when the fortress is built, when the gates are closed and guarded by silence, by purpose, by a mind that cannot be shaken, then and only then does the world finally understand. Nothing and nobody will ever affect you again. You began this journey as someone the world could shape, someone whose emotions were at the mercy of others, whose mind could be invaded by words, looks, silence, betrayal. But now you know better. Now you know the laws of the unseen battlefield. You've learned that true power is not about dominance over others, but sovereignty over yourself. That in a world of noise, those who speak least often hold the greatest influence. That silence is not a weakness, but a weapon. That mystery is not avoidance, but strategy. You understand that every room has a frame, and if you don't define it, someone else will trap you in theirs. You've seen how the man who speaks with intention, who moves with patience, and who reveals nothing he does not choose, becomes untouchable. And above all, you now grasp the brutal truth. Machiavelli would whisper to only the most prepared that if you are still being broken by people, still moved by their validation or rejection, still needing the world to understand you, you are not yet free. Freedom begins when the fortress is built within, when your peace no longer depends on the outside, when silence becomes your language, control becomes your nature, and detachment becomes your armor. From this moment on, you are not here to be liked. You are not here to be understood. You are here to command yourself, and through that command, your fate. Let them watch, let them wonder, let them try and fail to affect you, because now you are the storm behind the silence, the power behind the mask, the fortress that no man can enter unless you allow it. And that is how nothing and nobody will ever affect you again. And now we have reached the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe, activate the bell button, and like the video. We need your support.